All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone who has joined live on Demystifying Customer Research for Entrepreneurs. Before I get started, I will have a chat box open over here on the right. So if any questions come up as I go through, I will save plenty of time for the end. But if any questions come up along the way, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. And as we get started, I noticed that there are several people who don't know me, so let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I am Erin Baker, and I work with leaders and entrepreneurs to launch and grow businesses that make a difference in the world. And before I was a coach, I spent 5 years in the tech industry as a researcher and research leader doing user research, which is basically the same as customer research. Users use digital products, they're customers too. And before that, I got a PhD in social psychology at the University of Texas at Austin. And that PhD had a lot of research involved. So I've basically distilled my 10 years of PhD research and tech research into nuggets that you can use and implement in your businesses. And before I get started, I want to make something clear that there is a lot of information that I'm about to share with you. And my intention with this call is that you are able to be present, watch, write down the things that matter to you, but I will provide slides for this afterwards. All you need to do is either in the group that I'm going to post this in, find it there, or send me an email, which I'll share my email address at the end. So you can get a copy of these slides. So be present, write down what you need, and enjoy. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to start with the basics. What is customer research? Why should you do it? What types of business questions can customer research answer? Spoiler alert, pretty much anything you're stuck on. What are the different ways to conduct customer research? So things like social media posts, interviews, surveys. And once you've decided to do research, what are the different steps you need to take? And I'll clarify later what direct means. And then I'm going to dive into the customer interview method. It's one of the most daunting of the methods, but it also happens to be the one that's going to give you the most accurate and specific feedback that you want. So I'm going to talk about how do you find people to do these interviews with? What are the logistics of these interviews? And then how do you ask really good questions so you're getting the information that you really need from people? And then once you've got all that information, how do you form good conclusions about what you've just learned? And finally, I'm going to talk about how you might get more support from me. So there's a lot of information here that may be all well and good, but you may want some actual support in implementing. So what is customer research? You may have heard the term market research. You've heard me talk about user research, consumer research. It's all basically the same thing. It's getting to know who your customers are and how you can best serve them. So it allows you to uncover, what do they need? What do they want? What are some of the challenges they face? What are the beliefs or attitudes or motivations that underlie some of the things that they do? And what do they do? And by being able to get to all these things, you can really understand what is the product or service that you are going to design for them. So why would you do customer research? Well, certainly you can go online, especially if you're thinking about who your ideal client might be, and find a whole bunch of worksheets to fill out, or you can just use your own experience about what you want and need. But really, it's hard to do research without having any direct knowledge of your clients and customers. And the thing is, and this perpetuates a lot in the coaching industry, there's a myth out there that your ideal customer is you, but that's not always the case. In fact, I have a client right now who has multiple ideal customers, including nonprofits and fitness trainers, health and wellness professionals, coaches. none of which are him. So he can't really say the ideal customer is him. He needs to go out and find out, what do these people really need? And even if your ideal customer is a previous version of you, you may no longer relate to or remember what they're going through. So for me, my ideal customer really is an earlier version of me most of the time. It's people who are leaders, who are leaving to create businesses and startups. But that was me 2.5 years ago. I don't remember to the same degree what I was going through, what were my fears, what was in my head. So it's hard for me to even guess. And I can use an example of Facebook for the same reason. So when I used to work at Facebook, we used to really think, okay, we've designed the greatest product or feature that people are going to use. We've made it so easy and understandable. And then we'd bring someone into the research lab and they'd have no idea what the product was supposed to do. And you can even probably think of this in your own life. Think about the apps you use and you're so good at understanding how they work, and then you try to teach it to somebody else and you have no idea how to relate to what they know and don't know. So customer research really takes the guesswork out of every stage of your business in developing your products and services. It can save you a lot of time and money developing things that are not going to meet the mark for your people. So you could, without doing customer research, get stuck, right? Just think your way into what your ideal customer needs or who they are. But what would really happen is you'd end up throwing spaghetti at the wall and looking for what few things stick. Now, I've convinced you to do customer research. Why should you do it well? Well, I've seen so many people who put out a social media post or ask questions, and the answers they get just have them circling their target, circling their ideal customer, or circling their product or service. And then they don't know why. They don't know that they are just a hair off from understanding who their ideal client is, or just a hair off from creating the product or service that their people will love. And so if you learn to do customer research well to get the information that you really need, you're going to hit the target much more often. So what questions can customer research answer? Pretty much anything, from the basics of, does my business idea, my new idea, solve a real need? Do they need business coaches out there? Do they need photographers? Who are my ideal clients in terms of demographics? What are their ages? What kind of education do they have? Where do they live? But also from a psychological standpoint, what are their needs? What are their fears? What do they have in common? And what can I create for them? Do they need a one-on-one type product where they need to go in depth, or do they need something like an online course where they can self-study? Also, what are the types of products and services that my ideal customers don't want, don't like, won't pay for? You can ask specifics. What should I charge? What should I call this thing? And you can ask, what language should I use to communicate with my ideal customer? So this might be in the content that you put out online, or in the web copy on your website, or it could be in the sales copy for selling your product or service. And once you have your product or service out in the wild, you want to know, did it do what I thought it did? Did it solve the problem? How well did that meet my customers' needs? And going forward, what improvements can I make to that product or service? And this is just a sampling of the many, many questions that you might be able to answer with customer research. So now you know what you can ask. When should you do it? And just like you can ask almost anything, it's almost any time. So it could be in the business building stage. So validating your overall business idea. So does my business solve a real need? It could be in identifying your ideal customers, not only who they are, but where do I find them? Where do they hang out? And in a world where multiple people are offering the same product or service, clarifying who you are as an entrepreneur brand, or how your business brand works, and how you differentiate from other people who are doing the same thing. What's your unique flavor or special sauce? And in developing specific products and services, you can do this at all stages too. So in the early stages of generating ideas, what am I creating? Is it a course? Is it a service? Is it an app? What should I create? It can be in the design phase of, okay, now I have a product or service. What should I include in that? What should I not include? What should my course have? What should my course not have in terms of content? What's too much or what's irrelevant? As you're getting ready to launch something, you can finalize details like, how much should you charge? What should you call this thing? Or what language is going to speak to your ideal clients on your sales copy? And then finally, you can evaluate, how did my product or service do? Did it solve the problem? How can I make it better? So now you know the questions you can ask, know when you can do customer research. Well, okay, how do you do this? And I'm going to talk about the how, and then how do you blend the how and the when. So first, indirect methods. These are methods where you are not directly talking to your ideal customer. And these are not comprehensive, but these are three really popular ways of doing it. So you can review online communities and forums. You can go to the Facebook communities. You can go to Reddit. You can go to a lot of different places to find, where are your people? What are they saying? What are the problems that they need solved? And does your business potentially solve those problems? You can do competitive analysis, which is just a fancy term for looking at what else exists out there. If someone else has got the same product or service, or a similar product or service, what are they doing? What do you like about their product or service? What are you doing differently? What do you not like? And if you're in a business where you work directly one-on-one with customers, you can certainly listen to what they've offered up to you in the past, what kind of information they've volunteered, or even the problems you have solved for them in the past. Now, direct methods, which is I think a lot of you are coming here for, are when you actually engage with your ideal customer. So you can do a social media post or a poll. You can do a one-on-one interview, which is what we're going to dive deep into in a little bit. Or you can do a survey. So a qualitative survey, it's a fancy word for saying an open-ended question survey, and a quantitative survey, which is a fancy word for numbers. So getting at maybe the strength of people's liking of something, or asking them to choose between different options of things that they like. So what method should you use when? For what questions? For what types of things you're doing in your business? And let's start with indirect methods. And I'm going to reiterate, there's going to be a lot of information on these charts. I'd prefer for you just to sit and absorb and get these slides later. So let's start with reviewing online communities and forums. These are really great for early direction in your business. Do you have a business idea, or who might your ideal customers be? It is a place where you can get at some of the abstract or broad ideas that you might want to know about for building the right products and services. The challenge with this is that it may be hard to find the right forums. Where do your ideal clients hang out? Is this forum for this particular demographic really going to have the people with the right psychological variables that you care about? May not be your ideal customers. And it's really hard to capture nuance and depth in what people want and need unless you're able to really engage with people. And oftentimes in these online forums, people don't want to go super deep into what they need. So it's great for getting confidence in a direction, and really great for gathering information before you do direct customer research to really figure out what you need to know and where the gaps are. Competitive analysis. So who else is doing what you're doing out there? And I will say, if nobody else is doing what you're doing out there, that might be a bad sign. It might mean that there's actually not a need for what you're doing. So be careful with that. But one of the great things about competitive analysis is that you can look at what's going on out there. You don't have to just create from an empty blank slate. You can get ideas from other people and bring in what you like, bring in more of your own unique style or perspective on things, and get rid of things you don't like. So it can also help give you a lot of clarity on how you might differentiate from others. The challenges here is that you may not know what your ideal clients love and hate about a particular other product or service. And in fact, you have no idea if your people are even using those things. So I even just recently looked at an online course on customer research and had no idea what from that was gold for people and whether my people would even be using such a course. And not all ideas have relevant competitors. Something that you might create might be super niche and there is a need, but nobody else is doing it exactly that way, so comparisons are meaningless. It might be the other way too, that what you're doing is a little bit broader, or you're adding on to something that's been done, and so the comparisons aren't really one-to-one. So it's great for validating a business idea, making sure that what you're creating has a need in the world, especially if other people are doing it. It helps you clarify who you are as a brand and where you differentiate, and can really help in the early stages of designing a new product or service to understand, what are you bringing in to that from other places. So reviewing past and current customer pain points. This is when you are able to use your current or past customers, what they've offered up voluntarily to you, to understand what people might need. You can get a lot of information, especially if you're working with people one-on-one, without having to conduct additional interviews. Challenge here is what people might be offering up to you may have no relevance to the new thing you're going to create. So my coaching clients very rarely have said anything that would lead to how I would create this customer research webinar. You may be working with your customers or clients on something fairly specific right now, and so you might be missing the totality of their needs that you could solve with something new. And you may not be able to get the same level of depth of information as you want if you are, talking to people one-on-one. So this is great for early parts of designing a new product or service, but it's even better for evaluating a current or existing product or service. Your current customers, what they're offering up, can help you understand, are you actually solving their problem, and how might you make it better? So let's talk about direct methods. Social media posts. These are wonderful for getting fast and high volume feedback if you need a lot of information quickly. It's really easy for people on the other end to respond or give input, not very taxing for them. The challenge here is it can be really hard to ask the right questions to get the type of feedback you want. You can rarely go as in depth as you want. And not all questions are really appropriate for public responses. So money, relationships, politics. Oftentimes people are not going to respond on a public forum to things that are pretty sensitive to them. So it's really best for any time in your business you have a very specific question that you want to get a volume or breadth of feedback on. And since these are so popular, let me give you some examples of some posts that have been less than effective and some that have been more effective. So examples of less effective posts. I just saw this in a Facebook group a few days ago. So this person's writing a free webinar for six-figure entrepreneurs to help them overcome what's stopping them from breaking through to their next level. What issue would be a must include for this to be most helpful to you? The specific of what issue would be a must include is great, asking for just one thing. But if you back up, things lack a little bit of clarity. So what is a six-figure entrepreneur? Is that someone who's making six figures on the nose or just over? Is it someone who's making multiple six figures or high six figures? Is six figure the revenue, or is it the pay that they're taking home? And then what's breaking through to the next level? Is that about revenue? Is that about profit? Is that about growing the size of their team? As you can see, there's so many different ways that people may or may not know that this question is tailored to them, and may not know what is being asked. And if I look back on that post, one or two people may have said something, but one person actually said, I don't even know what getting to the next level is. And here's another example. So this was posted in a group a few weeks back, and this person's looking for information to create a course. And so she wanted to know what's most challenging, painful, frustrating around these different things: making money, increasing profitability, mindsets. And if you look at it, there are 6 questions that are going to be asked, and nobody responded for, I think, a few different reasons. One is 6 questions is a lot to ask people in a Facebook community, especially this particular community is relatively new, not a lot of activity yet. The other is the questions are a little bit vague. What's most frustrating about making money? Well, is it about creating the products or services? Is it about sales? I'm not really sure what this person's looking for specifically for their course material. And then finally, money is a subject people just don't talk about online. So this is a great example of a time when you might want to take your questions, get a little bit more specific, and ask people more directly in, say, an interview format. So questions are too general, and the topics don't really, people don't speak about them publicly. So here are a couple examples of more effective posts. And I'm going to say more effective because always there's room for improvement. But in a group I'm part of a few months back, the leader of the group posted, the biggest fear that I keep banging into as I build my practice is, it's really specific. It's in a group which is all coaches, so very similar things, a lot of new coaches. And what was great is it elicited a one-line response from a lot of different people. It was quick and easy for people and very clear what she was asking. And a couple dozen people responded, and I can only assume that she was using that for understanding how to create more content for people in the group. In that same group, she posted, she's creating an online course for new coaches. And so she wants to know, there's 2 different maps that are going to be part of the course, and which one do people like better based on the colors. This is a great opportunity or option for people in Facebook groups to get quick feedback on an either or decision. A lot of people responded. She was able to see a pattern, and she also got a lot of understanding of why people liked what they did, so she can make some future decisions around colors if she needs to. So a discrete choice is really, really good for a social media post. Interviews. Like I said, these are the most daunting, but the highest quality feedback that you can get. So with interviews, you're with people one-on-one. You're able to really get in depth. You can ask follow-up questions. You can get at the nuance. Oftentimes, you can uncover things that you wouldn't otherwise. So what might be beneath what people are asking? So someone might come to you wanting to grow their business, grow their revenue, but as you ask more questions, what they really want to do is have the money in order to take some more time to spend with their family and to work on their hobbies. So if you just design something that's going to help them make more money, that may not hit the mark, because what they really want is more time, and the money might not buy them the time the way they think. It also allows you to capture exact language and in a less filtered way. So when people are writing, they tend to filter, even if they unintentionally filter. And so when people are talking to you one-on-one, whatever comes out of their mouth unfiltered is usually really good in terms of how they like to talk about things. And so you can save that for later for your content and for your copy. Now, it is one of the more time-consuming methods. That being said, doing the work up front can allow you to save time and money later in terms of not having a product or a service that is not meeting people's needs. And it can be a challenge if you want to be able to directly contact people and you don't really know where they are. So it's great for identifying who your ideal clients are or customers, and really great in the stages of creating your product, everywhere from the idea generation stage to launching it. You could technically do interviews for products that have already been launched, but oftentimes you don't really need to go beneath the surface on that. And so you can get pretty good feedback with a couple of questions on a qualitative survey. Qualitative surveys. So open-ended questions. These are more in-depth than social media, so you can ask more broad questions and you can ask more questions. And you can get more information than a quantitative survey that's going to provide just a number. The challenge with these is they're very effortful for people to respond to. You send people an email with 10 questions and they're just going to be overwhelmed. They're going to say to themselves, God, I got to spend 30 minutes, an hour, like thoughtfully responding to this. Now, they'll get on the phone with you for 30 minutes to an hour and talk your ear off. But when you put that in front of them online, they're not going to respond. Or if they do respond, they're going to respond more half-heartedly. And so it can, depending on what you're trying to answer, lack necessary depth. You're going to get their surface level answers. You're not going to get what's beneath. So that might be okay if you're doing the evaluation of a product or a service, but I would not use this in the early stages of creating a product or service unless it's really, really a last resort. And I can't even imagine what a last resort might look like. Quantitative surveys. So this is getting numbers. You can ask a lot of questions in a quantitative survey. So 10 questions on a qualitative survey is going to be super overwhelming. 10 questions on a quantitative survey is just going to be like that. So it can help you make decisions on either or, like a title or a feature. It can help you prioritize. It can also help you measure the strengths of how people feel about something, how satisfied they are, or how big of a pain point something is. The challenge here is that you just need a high number of responses for the numbers to be meaningful. So if 2 people say one thing on a either or and 2 people say another, you really don't have an idea of what you should do. But if you talk to a lot of people, you might start seeing patterns in responses. Now, purely quantitative surveys do miss the why. So if you ask people, how satisfied are you with this product? And then you don't dig into why, you may not know why something is going wrong. So you can combine qualitative questions and quantitative questions on surveys. You just want to be very, very careful about how many of those open-ended questions you include as to not overwhelm people. So quantitative surveys are really great for last-minute decisions on what your product or service might have, and are really good for evaluating or improving a product. How well are you solving this problem? So now you've decided to do customer research. What are the steps you need to take? So the first thing you're going to do is formulate the broad research questions. What do I need to know? Am I validating a business idea? Am I searching for my ideal customer? And then even more specifically within that, you might want to know what are the challenges of my ideal customer? What are their demographics? And once you kind of know once you know, your questions, you can select from that list, okay, what are the methods that I can use for answering the question? Can I do a social media post, or do I need to do an interview or a survey? Once you figure out those methods, you can start getting to the specific interview or survey questions. What's the exact information I need to know in order to make decisions on my product or my service or my business? Once you do that, you can invite the people, find the right people for your research, you can conduct it with them, and then finally you bring it all together. You take all the information you've gotten, synthesize it, look for the patterns, and then figure out, okay, of all this information I've just gotten, what do I actually want to or need to act on? What changes about my product or service or my business or who my ideal client is? So let's dive into customer interviews, the most daunting but most fruitful of the methods. So as a refresher from a few minutes ago, you can do this to identify who might be your ideal customer, who are they, where do they hang out. You might do it in the idea generation stage of what product or service should I create? As you're designing your product or service, what am I including in this? What am I not including in this? And then finally, in the stage of finalizing details, what should I charge? What language should I use to talk to my people? And I should say, just like you can combine a qualitative and a quantitative survey, you can combine a single set of interviews to ask all these questions, right? You don't have to necessarily do a single research session for identifying your ideal customers and then do another one for designing your product or service. All these questions can come together in a single research study. So now you know that you're going to do a customer interview. Where are you going to find people? And the truth is, they're everywhere. Start with your personal network. I would avoid your friends and family if possible, unless they happen to be your ideal customers. But look around at your colleagues, your LinkedIn, or maybe even your colleagues know somebody. So you might want to speak with an emerging leader in the AI space, and someone in your network might be able to put you in contact with one of those people. Talk to your current and former clients. If they're still your ideal customer and you're designing something for them, they're a great resource. They get really excited about being able to help out, and it probably increases the likelihood down the line when that thing is ready that they are going to come and buy from you. You can also, if you have an email list or a community, utilize those people, especially the people who are your ideal customers. If you don't have that or you need more information, you can go to other online communities and forums. You can ask people if they'd be willing to talk with you. And you can go in person to events and meet people that are relevant to your ideal customers or your business. It can seem really daunting to go invite people to customer research, and I get it. Asking people to give their time for free, really? Well, turns out people really do want to help, especially if you're not making a personal pitch to them for your product or service. If you really are solving a problem for them and are getting super curious, people are absolutely willing to help out. You want to make it clear that you are not selling anything and that you are only coming from a place of wanting good feedback. So let me emphasize, this is not a time to pitch your product or service. Do not burn a bridge. Do not bait and switch. People are giving you their time and their feedback, and they don't expect to be sold to, and it is not a time for you to sell it. Don't even conduct customer research if what you're ultimately trying to do is turn someone into a customer. You're going to want to check your emotional attachment at the door. So often when we are creating our products, our services, we love what we've created. We think it's absolutely great. And it can be hard to hear that people don't like certain things or don't like it at all. This is a great time to put on your lab coat as a scientist. Almost pretend like you've hired yourself as an external consultant to come in and do unbiased research. You're going to nail your product or service with your ideal client more often if you're willing to detach and truly serve their needs rather than staying attached to what you think is the right thing. You're going to want to speak to at least 5 people, ideally somewhere around 8. So any less than 5 people, you're going to see a lot of individual needs, idiosyncrasies, without really finding patterns. Now, you don't need really more than 8 people. And in fact, there's been some research done on qualitative interviews where at a certain point, after about 8 people, there are diminishing returns. You're going to start hearing the same thing. And every time I say this, I think about a time when I was doing research for Facebook in Canada, and we had 100 interviews scheduled. And by the 10th person, we had all the information we needed, which made the other 90 interviews a little bit painful. You want to ensure confidentiality. People are coming to you to talk about things that might be fairly sensitive to them. And people like to please you. They like to say what you want to hear. And so by ensuring confidentiality, what you're really doing is allowing them to open up about things that might be sensitive and to not tell you the things that they think you want to hear. This also allows you to ask questions that might be a little deeper than they're used to being asked. When you're in the interviews, you want to listen for patterns. You want to listen for what is common among these people, not the individual things that people are saying. You're going to have the highest leverage in your product or service when you're serving those overall patterns versus individual needs. And you want to listen for what's beneath people's answers. Going back to this idea of someone wanting to get more money in their business, but really wanting more time for them, their family, and for their hobbies. You want to listen for that. And you really want to get curious. Go dig in, ask follow-up questions. If they're telling an interesting story that could be useful, follow up with that. You might have a set of questions that you really want to answer, but rigidity in the name of science here is actually not good. Really serve that person and serve yourself by diving into questions that are going to give you more information. Logistics. How do you do these calls? I highly recommend that you do a video chat over phone. One is that you can get people's emotions. Sometimes what people emote over the video is different than what the words they are saying. And so you can dive deeper into what that was about and get at what's really their issue. Also, video chat is a great way to record. And you want to ask people for permission for this. But if you can record your chat, it gives you the ability to be super present in the interview, ask the follow-up questions, get curious without having to furiously type notes or write them down. If you do ask for permission to record, be very, very clear, again, that their answers are confidential and that you won't be putting their videos anywhere. It's great to create a document or a spreadsheet for notes. Break it up by the different questions that you're answering so that when you go back to look at what are the patterns, instead of a running ledger of stuff, you have everything organized and can see the overlaps. And you really want to leave a space for direct quotes. If you want to speak the language of your ideal customers, you want to capture their language and reflect it back to them. And this is the best way to do it. All right, so the art of asking good questions. I am going to spend some time on each of these. This is where you can really go from surrounding your target to hitting your target. So open-ended versus closed-ended. Closed-ended question is something that's going to get a single answer, like a yes, no. And open-ended is going to be something that people expand upon a lot. So if you ask a closed-ended question, do you have any challenges in business? Yeah. Great. What else? You don't get a lot of information from that. If you ask an open-ended question like, tell me about a recent challenge that you had in your business. What was the challenge? What did you do to try to solve it? How did it end up? Now you're going to get so much information about your person. You're going to understand, what do they even consider to be a challenge? How do they try to solve challenges? What are their strategies? And what is their evaluation of how it ended? There's so much more rich information that you can get from these different pieces of the open-ended story. Stories versus statements and specific behavior versus overall behavior, I'm going to lump together. So stories. The more you can get people to elaborate, the better. So if you ask me, where have you traveled lately? I might say, well, I just got back from Chicago. Great. Not a lot of information. But if you ask me for, tell me about your most recent trip, I might then start talking about how I went to Chicago and I visited chosen family and it was a road trip. I might tell you about the culinary adventures I had. By telling you a story, you're hearing about what's important to me, as opposed to dictating what information you might want. So you'll learn a whole lot about me, how I think, from telling the story of what was important for me to remember about that particular trip. You also want to ask for specific behavior. If you ask for overall behavior, like how do you spend money or what does your diet look like, people are going to answer from what's called their ideal self. It's what they want to be in an ideal world. And so how do you spend your money? Oh, I save a lot. I don't go out. I don't spend a lot of money on entertainment. That kind of response. Or with diet, I eat really healthy. But if you ask him about a specific behavior, a totally different picture might emerge. So in the last week, outside of normal bills and expenses, what did you spend money on? You might all of a sudden hear, well, on Monday I went to the movies. On Tuesday I had coffee with a friend. On Wednesday I went out to dinner. And now all of a sudden you see this person likes to spend on their entertainment, their friends. But if you'd asked them about their ideal self, they may have not said that. So really, really generating tell me a story about your behavior, and let's get really specific. And speaking of behavior, past behavior is going to be the way to ask about future behavior. You could ask people about how likely are you to buy this product or service, or what do you think you're going to do in terms of your workout schedule in the future? People are notoriously bad at predicting what they might do in the future. So the best bet is to actually look at what they've done in the past, because what they've done in the past is shown in science to be a predictor of how people will behave in the future. So you might want to know, you have this course you're launching, how much would this person pay for a course that helps them launch their business? They may say $1,000. Then you might go launch that course. They don't pay. Why not? Well, if you'd ask them about their past, you might have some clues. So tell me about any courses you've bought in the past. They might reel off a few courses and you might find, wow, they've never spent more than a couple $100s on their courses. Or you might ask them about business investments overall, business education, and you might find that they haven't invested in their business education. So the likelihood that they may pay what they think, $1,000 for a course, is actually not true. They're most likely going to spend only a couple $100s, if anything, on their business education. You want to avoid questions everyone would say yes to. And there's two kinds of questions like this. There's ones where everyone's going to want to tell you the right answer, right? So is your health important to you? Nobody is going to tell you no. That would be a shameful, guilt-inducing thing to say. So you never want to ask a question where they're going to have to lie to answer the question. Another way you can ask about it is, what, if anything, do you do to take care of your health? So you're not assuming health is important to them by saying, what, if anything? You're giving people permission to not take care of their health, but you might also learn about how they do, which is ultimately what you probably wanted to know anyway. The other form of a question everyone say yes to is something that everyone would just say yes to because it's a popular thing. No monster, in my opinion, no monster is going to say they don't like ice cream. But some people, if you ask them, do you like ice cream that costs $10 a pint, might say no. And if you're selling ice cream that's $10 a pint, that might not be your ideal client. So you want to ask questions in a form that you know that you're going to find some people don't like your thing, are going to say no. You want to pull information people rather than pushing what your agenda is on people. And at the same time, you want to avoid asking questions that would lead people to specific answers. So this goes back to, you're not there to pitch your product or service, and that you're not there to be emotionally attached to what you're asking them about. So let's say you're doing an interview where you want to talk to people about this product that you've created. You want to know what they like about it. If you ask them, what do you like about this new product? They're compelled to find something they like, even if they don't like anything at all. If you just add the two words, what, if anything, do you like about this new product? You have now given people permission to say, you know what? I don't like anything at all. You have not assumed that there is something likable about the product. Same goes with leading questions. So how often do you work out? You've assumed in this question that the person works out. So now they're compelled to give an answer, or to lie, or to feel something about the fact that they don't work out, like there's something wrong with them. So this is a great time when you might actually want to ask a closed-ended question before you do a follow-up. Do you have a workout routine? And finally, you want to ask why. Why is going to help you get to the bottom of what's really the deepest need or challenge for people. And you want to ask why, kind of like a toddler that keeps asking, mommy, why, mommy, why, mommy, why. So someone might say, I want to go to the gym. Why? Because I want to lose weight. Why? Because I want to look good. Why? Well, because I want a romantic partner. Why? Well, because I'm lonely. So if you'd stayed at that surface level, you might design some sort of product or service around getting people to the gym, but miss out on an opportunity to cure some of their loneliness, maybe through workout partners or buddies. You may not get them the romantic partner, but you might be able to cure some of their loneliness that you wouldn't have known had you not gone deeper. And so your solution, they wouldn't know why your solution didn't work, but it wouldn't work because what really they want is companionship. So why questions like toddlers are really perfect. And people are okay with you saying why. Keep asking until you think you've gotten to the root problem. So now that you've asked all these questions, how do you draw great conclusions? So I've said this before, you want to find the patterns in what people are saying across people. What are multiple people saying? And ignore the unique details of any one person. You want to focus on what they're saying. So what's the high level thing? They want more money, they want to go to the gym. But you also want to focus on what they aren't saying, what's underneath, because you want to provide that solution as well. That is going to be more important than that surface level solution. You want to look for evidence of both confirmation and disconfirmation. So when you're designing your questions, or even when you're listening for people's answers, it's really easy to look for, especially if you're emotionally attached, for evidence that people like your business idea, that they like your product or service, or that you're talking to your ideal customer. And the more you can listen for what would make this product not work for my people, or what would make this business idea not work, the more unbiased you're going to be, and really making sure that you're not creating a product or service or a business that you like but doesn't actually appeal to your ideal customers. And finally, you want to figure out what you're going to act on that's most important. You're going to get a lot of information, and it may be confusing as to what exactly am I supposed to do with this. So you want to think about, what are the 2 or 3 most important things that I can take away from this and apply to my business. So I've provided you a whole lot of information today, and I want to send you an offer for how you might be able to get some continued support on doing this market research. It may be all well and good that I've given you a bunch of information, but how do you really apply this? Well, one way you can get continued support is joining my free Facebook community. It's called the Impact Entrepreneur Launchpad. It's a lot of heart-centered, service-oriented entrepreneurs who are in the business of changing lives of others. I share a lot of information in that group around market research or customer research, around business development, mindset, and there are a lot of folks who are there to leverage and support you in your business. So if you want to join that group, it's totally free. That's where I will be posting these slides once they are ready. If you're wanting something more high touch, I just created this for this webinar for you all. It's currently called the Dream Client Intensive. And it's really for any of you out there who would like some support and guidance in doing some of your customer research. So you might be a new entrepreneur, kind of building the foundations of what is my business, or who are my ideal clients. But you also might be someone out there who's just feeling stuck. You know, you're not drawing in the right people to your business, you're not making the revenue, or you're not really sure what you're going to create next. So this is a 4-week or 4-session, doesn't have to be in 4 weeks, one-on-one intensive with me. So we'll nail down who is your ideal client and one of your programs that you're offering. And we'll start with, what do you already know about your ideal customer or the program that you're creating or service? What are the gaps that we can fill with indirect research? So doing some online forum searching or doing some competitive analysis. And then what are the gaps that you actually need to fill with direct interviews with people? We'll then spend some time really co-creating what are the interview questions that you can ask that's going to generate the level of specificity that you want in your answers, right? So making sure you're not asking too broad of questions to not get what you want, but also not being so specific that you're not able to see what you need to see. And then we'll practice. It can be really intimidating to do your first interview. So practice with me. I'll give you feedback. You can get out the jitters from the nerves, the jitters, while getting some concrete tips on how you can ask better questions, what you could dive into with people, and getting you really confident so that when you go out and talk to that first customer, you're ready to go. And finally, we'll bring together the insights and we'll look at what are the concrete action steps that make sense for you to apply in your business. And I can ask some follow-up questions to get things really concrete for you. So really, I want to help you get razor sharp clarity in who you serve, how you serve them, and how you speak to them with your content. But mostly, even beneath that, is I want you to be able to repeat this process on your own anytime in the future. I want you to feel confident that you are doing the targeted, not missing the mark research every time. So if you're interested in this, being one of my first people to take on this intensive, send me an email at erin@erinmbaker.com, and we can have a quick chat to see if it's the right fit for you. If you'd like to go a little bit more intense, I am enrolling for my 2020 Launch Accelerator group coaching program. And this is for heart-centered, service-oriented entrepreneurs out there. So coaches, trainers, educators, people who support those people, if you're like a web person or photographer, who are, in the business of making a difference in people's lives. And you might be in the beginner's nest or ready to fly from that beginner's nest and really want to, increase your income and impact, but you might feel like, I don't even know where to start. And you might feel incredibly alone. Solo entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship in general can be one of the loneliest places. So this is a place where you can leverage the support of me and of other brilliant peers to really help your business fly. So we'll spend some time at the outset getting really clear on what is your vision, your purpose, your mission for your business. What is the overarching long-term thing? Why are you here? And then we'll spend some time doing the customer research, getting you super clear on who are your ideal customers and what are the services or programs or products that you create to serve them. We'll then spend some time what I'm calling moonshot goals, figuring out what in this 9 months are you going to go after that seems just a little bit impossible. And then through the course of the 9 months, we'll develop what is the strategy for going after those moonshots? What are some of the skills you need to develop? What inner game do you need to work on? Where are some of the mindsets or beliefs or fears getting in your way of truly flying? And we'll spend some time on making sure you take care of you so that you're not that person who is asking to increase revenue, who really wants to spend more time with their family and with their hobbies to create a well-rounded you. So there's more information about this program on my website at erinmbaker.com. And if it's something that's of interest to you, go ahead and send me an email at erin@erinmbaker.com. Or you can send me, if you were friends with me on social, a LinkedIn message or a Facebook message. So with all that said, does anyone have any questions? Awesome. So it sounds like nobody has any questions. If you're someone who knows me, I'd love feedback on what worked for you in this webinar, what you wanted more of, what you wanted less of. And I hope to see some of you in the Impact Entrepreneur Launchpad. So for now, have a wonderful evening and hope to be in contact with some of you all soon. Take care.